Good morning, everyone,
Good morning.
and welcome back to our Connect and Community podcast.
Yes, back in our own space, which I'm
Yeah.
very excited about.
If you've been following us for longer than 6 months, you recognize this couch.
Yeah,
And
the OG couch.
yeah, just a different apartment, but obviously you can't tell because it's just white walls everywhere.
Yeah,
So.
nothing is up yet. Like honestly, I hope it's not too ugly, but yeah, it's good to be back, and we are excited to continuing to give you all good content.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't even know what to say about that.
We're happy to be back and
Yeah.
have a home again.
Honestly, it's weird to not have a space because quick snippet on this, but I feel like we kind of we got back to Austin on the 10th, and then like the 11th we already moved in, and then we like were on it. Like it was just kind of like really fast, kind of a whiplash.
Yeah.
And so it feels weird to be like, oh, we haven't even been in our place for a whole week, but it just like we were just in a different country. Like it's just weird, but
Yeah.
it's nice. It's nice. I'm excited. I'm really happy to be home and just to be. I'm like a homebody for real. So I'm happy to have a space.
I agree. I miss Japan. I don't know what I feel about that, but it was a good 6 months of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Japan was so long ago.
I know it was the first thing. So yeah, okay. Well, let's do today's episode.
I'm going to today's episode. So, if you were listening to episode 2 weeks ago, we said we were going to put that in two parts, and then So this is the second part of that podcast.
Yeah.
Where someone had two questions, and we are just gonna look at the second part. So let me look at it real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, I thought because that question was quick, but I felt like there were two parts to that, so you can look it up.
So pretty much the question is, when should you know you're ready to marry your partner? Because they were listening to a Christian podcast, and they pretty much said that like you should know within the year, or at least by even tomorrow. Like I guess kind of like a joke, but like even by like
I don't know if that's
tomorrow.
a joke.
It went like within a year or tomorrow. I'm like, okay, like obviously she didn't say tomorrow, but you should know pretty soon, in a sense, when you're dating somebody if you're gonna marry them. That's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah.
Which we kind of wanted to obviously dissect the question and share our thoughts on that, and
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah, I think now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like there is I see kind of what maybe that's what they were trying to say, and I can see how I could agree with that in some like to some measure. That makes sense. But I think that for people who have anxiety, or even me personally, when I was in church, like back in Belgium, that's also something that was taught to me, is like you can't date unless like that this is the one you're gonna marry. And I think that's the extreme of that statement, of like saying you should know by like by the year, or even tomorrow, if you're gonna marry that person or not. That would be taken to an extreme of like, but what if like I don't know? That means that my relationship is wrong.
Right.
Like it's like, I don't know right now. Like when should I know if like I should marry them? And if I don't know and I'm not sure, does it mean that I shouldn't be with them? And I think that's the tricky part. And obviously for me, when I believe that, I was like, well, dang, I shouldn't date at all, because I should have a revelation of the person I want to date is the person I'm going to marry, when I'm not even committed to them in any way.
Yeah.
But that's an extreme, obviously.
Sure. And I think it's hard too, because you hear other people's stories where it's like, I knew right away, or it was just this moment like pretty quickly that I knew. And then you compare your story of like, well, I didn't know, I still don't know, I must be doing something wrong. And then you hear this podcast, and it's kind of like, okay, well, then I'm definitely doing something wrong if I don't even know within the year we've been dating for this amount of time or whatever. And I think that's we can have a perspective of, okay, like sure, you're dating with the intention of marriage. We'll just put that, like we're dating with the intention of there being something deeper, and potentially like we're going there. If it ends up going there, like if it ends up leading to that direction, that's where I'd want it to go. But obviously not every single relationship ends up there, because
Yeah.
But but to have this perspective of when I go into this relationship, date one, I should know potentially if I'm going to marry this person. I think is really, really like that's impossible. I don't think you should have to have that high expectation of I need to know after this first date if you're potentially if this is where we're going because
Yeah.
you aren't going to know that. And if you think you have to know that, that's going to be so much pressure, and you're not going to be able to enjoy it because you're always like, stressing out of oh my gosh, I'm feeling anxious. Oh my gosh, like I should know by now. It's been like only 2 months. It's been only 4 months. It's been whatever.
Yeah. That was a problem with our relationship, like with me, because I believed that for a while. You know, it's like I was stressing out so much because I didn't know if you were the one for me. You know, like,
Mm.
and it's like I'm scared that like I'm doing something wrong because I feel like I should know and I should like. It's almost like there's no room for there's no room for error. It's like
Yeah.
no, you have to know. Like when you date someone, you have to know that you're gonna marry them. I'm like, what? Like I used to believe that, but now that I think about it, it's like that's crazy because it's like assuming that like you don't know much about that person,
Mm.
but you need to figure out if you're gonna marry them.
Right.
Like that sounds a little crazy to me. And I think that you know, in old times, like biblical times, like they were not knowing very much about each other before they
It's true.
decided to get married. Uh, but I think with them, the difference too is that they were not overthinking the one.
Mm.
You know,
Hmm.
they were not overthinking about making the perfect decision.
Right.
Because sometimes, depending on the culture, obviously, but um, there's some cultures which it's arranged marriages, you know,
Hmm.
and they work because the people are working on their marriage. And then if you look at the Bible, like they were not really thinking very much. It was very much like, "Oh, you were nice to me. You want to marry me?" Yeah, you know, it's like not a big thought process behind it. I think that's obviously the in this more like modern society where people want to take their time to figure out if the person they're with is the best option possible. You
Right.
know, so with that comes a lot of a lot of overthinking, a lot of anxiety, especially if like you feel like there's pressure to know tomorrow if you're gonna marry them or not. And the truth is, you don't have to. You know, I think in some ways I can agree with that statement just because you you should be with a person. I don't even say you should, but it'd be better for you to be with a person that like if you were to marry them tomorrow, like this is a healthy person.
Sure.
This is a good person.
Yeah.
You know, like you want to marry someone for potential.
Hmm.
You know, like you don't want to date someone even for potential. Like you don't want to be with someone because in the future they're gonna be better. Like yeah, they might be better, but you don't know. You have to figure it out with what's in front of you right now.
Exactly.
Um, and we're not saying like you need to make a decision right now if you're gonna marry them, but it might be good for you to actually maybe helping your anxiety to be like, is the person I am worth being married to?
Hmm.
Not even by me, not even by yourself, but by like if there was someone I know that was to meet my current partner, they would be really blessed to have that person.
Sure.
I think that's a different approach. And
Hmm.
maybe that's what they were trying to say.
Right. We
And
don't know. We didn't hear the
yeah,
podcast, unfortunately. So we're getting it based off of the person's anxious thought coming back to us, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Um, and I think that there's a I won't even I don't want to bring any confusion to this, but I think that there's just even with what you mentioned of let's just say somebody else says that this person would be good. That might not even be the best indicator for you because it still might feel like for you like I'm just doing it because everyone else says it's good, but even if I don't like this person or I don't think this is good for me. You know what I mean? Like it's like a settling thing. But that's another conversation, but I just want to preface this in a sense of if you are in a relationship with somebody who you know is a great incredible person and you know like obviously like you're there's attraction like you knew in the beginnings when you were dating them or beginning to date them that you really really wanted to be that person or really really wanted to get to know them more that is a good sign that there were things that attract you about the person in the beginning that probably are still here now um if you're I just want to make sure that that's clear because I do have clients who come to me and they are having this thought of everybody, like really everybody says this person is good, but I know for me, if I go with this person, then I would be settling. We should talk about that last week's episode. So listen to that last week's episode. I think
Mm.
that'll bring some clarity on what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I just want to always like preface that. But I do agree with you in the sense of, if I know that this person is who I want, like I don't have to know right now, tomorrow, if I'm gonna marry them, but I at least have to know this person's a good person,
Yeah.
and this person really would be like, I would be happy with them and vice versa. Like they'd be happy with me. Like that's a good indicator in general if you're moving towards marriage or moving to like going deeper into relationship, to at least know like I enjoy this person and this person actually makes me happy,
Yeah.
and vice versa, of course.
Yeah. Now the other question obviously is like, how early, like, should you know that, you
How
know?
early should you know? That's the thing. I think some people know, some people do know right away, and
Yeah.
that's great. And some people just take some time. And I think if we can't judge our own selves of how quickly we should know something,
Yeah.
because I think then that's just going to bring a lot more stress.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you, and I have actually an experience with that. When we were dating, um, I feel like I was so focused on figuring out if I was gonna marry you
Mm.
that I really couldn't enjoy the present
Yeah,
because I was so much in my head.
yeah, for sure.
So there's something here. Watch out. Like if you try to focus so much on the future that you forget how to be present, then you're doing something wrong. You
Mhm.
know, like you shouldn't be so, because if you're concerned about the future at that point, like you are you are trying to control the future,
Yeah.
and you need to let go a little bit. And that means that you probably also don't trust the future. You feel like you probably are going to mess up, and so you're trying to compensate by trying to make the perfect decision.
Mhm.
So there's a little, you know, there's probably a lie underneath that, like you feel like maybe you can't make good decisions, or that decision you're going to make is going to end up being bad or whatever.
Mhm.
um so for me, like I remember, especially if we're talking about in the context of like Christian dating, when I was dating her, I was asking God so many questions about, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know if I am I gonna marry her, blah blah blah. And God told me, like, you need to stop like trying to figure out if you're gonna marry her or not.
Mm.
Which is, interesting, because I've had so many Christians, they want to find the answer to that question from God. They
Yeah.
want God to tell them, yes, you're gonna marry her or you're gonna marry him. But for me, in that moment, God told me, you don't need to know, and you don't need to be so like concerned about your future, because you are not being present anymore, and you
Mm.
don't know how to enjoy being with her.
Yeah.
You don't know, like, how to enjoy your relationship. If you enjoy your relationship, then it's probably a good sign that you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
If there's enjoyment in that relationship, unless obviously if your enjoyment is hindered by anxiety, that's a completely different thing. Okay, if you feel like you can't enjoy your relationship because of anxiety, it doesn't mean your relationship is
Right.
wrong.
Exactly.
Or if like you can't enjoy it because you don't like their personality, or any judgment that's clouded by anxiety is wrong.
Mhm.
Just want to put that out there. Like, anxiety will bring down your experience of your relationship, but you need to figure out why you're anxious. You don't need to figure out if it's your relationship that's making your experience not enjoyable. If that
Right.
makes sense.
I think this is too why we always say, don't let like figure out your anxiety first before you figure out what you actually are wanting. So
Yeah.
I think that if you are attempting to make a decision in the midst of anxiety, it's going to be so clouded, you're not going to make a good decision. You're just going to do whatever brings the most relief at the time, right? But relief and peace are not the same things. And so if we're able to separate the thoughts of like, I won't make a decision until I figure out what is actually going on, how to handle this anxiety,
Yeah.
then I can make a decision that's clear and actually full of clarity and not full of like confusion and fear and anxiety, because you can't, it's going to be so clouded and so hard to actually know what you're wanting and needing in the moment when anxiety is saying one thing and your anxiety is probably saying 20 million things. You're unsure of like which voice is me, which voice is whatever, and it's like all the stuff. So if you obviously are feeling anxiety, you can't even make a decision. It's hard to even know. It taints your vision. It literally taints your whole perspective of what your relationship is, because so much is happening in your mind rather than
Mhm.
actually knowing what's actually happening in front of you.
Yeah. And just because there's relief doesn't mean it's right, right? So that's what she said. Like relief and peace are just two different things,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we've said that bit before. Um, but yeah, I think that if you're someone who's overly concerned about figuring out if you're gonna marry that person or not, then you probably you probably need to step back a little bit and go back to being present
Mm-hmm.
and enjoying your relationship. Now, I also want to say, if you're scared of commitment, then there's something else there. Because I think that at some point you can't let the fear of commitment hold you back forever. Like if you've been with someone for 3 years and you don't know if you want to marry them, and I'm kind of almost paraphrasing another guy. I don't remember his name, but another famous Christian podcast. Um, like if you don't know after 3 years, I can tell you that if you've been with someone for 3 years, then you know if you're gonna marry them or not. Like if you were able to put up with someone for that long, um, like you need to make a decision. Like you can't let fear of commitment hold you back. You can't let uncertainty hold you back. Like I do think that at some point, marriage, if that's what you want to like, if you want to get married, at some point you need to just do it.
Yeah.
Um, and I will say that marriage is a big deal. Yes, it is, but I don't want to make people feel like choosing to get married is a big deal. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I don't know how to explain that, but like
I understand.
marriage as a thing, like marriage as a commitment is a big thing. But the decision to get married is not that big. Sometimes it's just like you're just moving to the next step. And
Mm-hmm.
when your relationship that was already a good relationship and you're doing something good like just getting married,
Yeah.
like for us, marriage was a small wedding, like we just did a court wedding, but like that was the
They're
best
so
for our
fast.
relationship, like,
Mm-hmm.
and to be honest, like if we didn't do it, it would have been a different process because COVID happened right after we got married and we didn't know COVID was there. And then it would have delayed so many things. Like if we just decided to get engaged instead of getting married, we were engaged for a month, not even a month,
No, for
maybe,
2 weeks.
yeah, for 2 weeks, which is crazy. Um, but I'm so grateful though. Like
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like that also can teach you a lesson of like if you can do something, like don't delay it.
The quickness was necessary for us.
Yeah,
And I think for some people, it's probably necessary too, because you're going to overthink yourself to be like, and it's like once you're in, you know?
yeah,
And I think once you've made that decision, if you're somebody who you've had a couple of days, I had a client message me today actually of, okay, I've been having, like, I've been actually feeling a lot of peace and feeling really good. And like knowing, like, I actually feel like I could be ready. And
mm,
then suddenly all this anxiety came of like all
yeah,
these questions. And now I'm confused. I'm like, okay, well, then you actually were in the right. You know what I mean? Like you actually were leaning into what you actually wanted. And then
yeah,
anxiety is going to throw all of its, last tactics to kind of hook you back in because that's what anxiety does. But at the end of the day, you guys, most of you, if you've been dating for however long, 2+ years, and you have moments of like good feelings, and next moments are like freaking out. Like in reality, one, you know what you want, but I think you're just afraid that all the stuff that the anxiety is telling you potentially could happen, and then you don't know what to do with that.
mm-hmm,
But future fears are not real, right? And we will say that every single episode if we need to. Future fears are not a real thing. We can have a fear, but does not mean it actually is real. I have fears. Like the other day, I had a thought. I had a fear of like, oh my god, like it was actually last night, and I had this thought of, oh my gosh, like what if me or Matthew like passes away in our sleep tonight, and this is the
oh my
last time we see each
gosh,
other.
what?
I have dark thoughts, not dark thoughts, but like I have sometimes for those who don't know, I do have some fear. Like fears can easily attempt to show up in my heart if I don't keep them in check. Of like death, it's been my thing for a really long time. Um, and I had this thought, and then I was like, okay, you know what? Future fears are not real. I don't have to think about that right now because it's not going to happen. I'm just going to go to sleep for one. It was literally for going to sleep. Like I'm just going to go to sleep and call it good. It's fine.
That's why you're tired today.
Maybe. But I do go to sleep quickly. But I think too, it's just like we can hone in and focus on this future fear for the rest of our life and never ever make any progress because that's what's leading our life. But fears cannot dictate your life, and you'll never have a happy life if that is what you're choosing to focus on. And so if you're having fears right now of, okay, like I what if I get married and then blank, blank, blank happens, whatever, all these fears, like at the end of the day, if your partner is not showing those things, if you have no evidence that that is something that's going to happen in your relationship, then that's not real. That's a future fear. And we can't let future fears dictate our life, period. Um, and so I think that if you're in a relationship and you guys have been together for a long time and you've been thinking about popping the question or thinking about saying I do or whatever that even looks like, um, and you know that this person is somebody you want most of the days, and some days you have a lot of anxiety, those other days are probably like that's what your truth is. Like that's actually what you want. And you can't let anxiety rule your life. And so you kind of just have to pull the band-aid after a while, just like, okay, I'm gonna do it. So I know I want to do this. I'm not gonna let fear win.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think when you have anxiety, you're not yourself. So you can't let anxiety tell you what to do because it's not you.
Mhm.
It's not a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of what you want. And I think that's really important to remember that. Even we were talking about anxiety today, and I told her like because she said when I'm anxious, I'm not myself.
Mhm.
And so I told her when I'm anxious to grab my face and to say like I want my husband back. But I think there's some truth to that, obviously. And I okay, this is probably controversial, or maybe you won't agree with me, and that's fine. You can give your opinion, but in my opinion, you know, how early should you know? Like, I will say that if you're beginning of your relationship, you don't need to know. First of all, as a general rule, like if you just started dating, you just need to know. I will say, for me, like it's a general rule, it depends on everyone's situation, but for most people, I'd say like if you've been dating for like 9 months, I would start considering it. But that's my thoughts.
Mhm.
It's like I feel like 9 months is a solid, like, long enough time to be able to figure out if your relationship is serious or not. You know, like before that, if you don't want to think too much about it, you just want to enjoy your relationship and keep building that friendship. I think that's really important when you're dating, is build your friendship with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, and you have to build that connection and the chemistry and all that, and just enjoy doing things together, build the vulnerability, the trust.
Yeah.
But after 9 months of doing that, like, I would say you can probably think about moving to the next step. But that's me. That's my thoughts. Because like like we were saying, like if you've been with someone for 2 years, and you have not been able to decide, then we need to figure out what's going on.
Sure. And obviously, I'll preface in a sense of if you're really young or if you are in the military, there's other
Yeah, there's other factors.
circumstances
Yes.
where as to why you date longer, and that's completely okay.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't apply to you, then that's different, right? If you're somebody who like we have to be dating for a long time just because
Yeah.
of X, Y, and Z, no big deal. Awesome. You're in school, whatever. But if you have nothing that's holding you back and you've been, kind of like figuring it out. There's this couple actually. I'm not gonna name names. There's so many couples on Instagram or in TikTok, so you're not gonna know who I'm talking about. But they've been dating forever, forever, and they always like make jokes like as like a fun thing on Instagram of like, oh, maybe my boyfriend's gonna propose today. And I'm like, bro, you've been dating this girl since you were like 15. You guys are however old now, like very much the age you guys could get married. I know money's not holding you back. Like, there's no reason. I would love to sit down with them and be like, what's going on? Like, why? It's just interesting.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I know that she wants it. It's not like they're like, oh, I don't want to get married. Like, she actually really wants to get married. And so it's interesting that that's like where they're at right now. And what at this point, it's like they know that they're good for each other from what we see.
Yeah.
From what we see.
Yeah.
But I think that there comes a point where you have to see where your relationship is going. Like, are we just going to date forever? If that's what you guys both want, fine.
Yeah.
But I feel like 90% of the people, I want to say higher, but I'm going to say 90. 90% of people don't want to just date forever. I think most people want to move forward to something that signifies that this is what where our relationship is heading, and this is how I know that you're committed for life. Like whatever, and you can call paper what it is. You can, it's just a piece of paper. I don't think it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's just a piece of paper, then just sign it. You know what I mean? Like it's not a big of a deal. But exactly. It's not. That's a good excuse and a nice fun thing to say. Like it's just a piece of paper. I don't need a paper to prove my love. Okay, well, if it's not that big of a deal, then make it legal, right? Like at the end of the day, then fine, then just do it. Like government, like not government wise, legality when it comes to those things.
Is that a word?
Yeah, legality. It's a word. That alone, like if you were to pass away, would you not want your partner to have like what you have or what you know what I mean? Like just even like take care of that person in case something were to happen. If you have kids, like there's so many other factors just to be besides signing this piece of paper. It actually signifies so much more by a lot of different things. But also it's just like at the end of the day, I'm 100% in. That's it. I'm 100% in. And if you want to be 100% in with your relationship, it is going to take a fact of you like taking that step to do that.
Yeah, and I think even with that, it's like I do think that like it changes your mindset once you're married. Like the way you perceive your relationship, you can really like see yourself as like a family, as a unit.
Yeah.
When like you're not married, it's really like, well, if you want to leave, you can leave. Yeah. If she wants to leave, she can leave.
Nothing's holding you.
You know, it's like
maybe like a lease, sure.
It's like marriage is for me, I think is just necessary for a relationship. There's another couple I reached out to that, you know, they've also been together for a while. They live together, like that couple you were saying, they live together. Like, you know, like if they were to get married, their lifestyle would not change. And I'm like, why are you not doing it? You know, like what's holding you back? Like, are you scared of something? You know? And I think, I don't know. I just think it's really, really important to do that, to make that step and put yourself in that position of like, oh, now we are a unit, you know, and we do things together and we plan our lives together. I think it's so important.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, like I think the answer to how early should you know is going to depend on everyone. If you're in, like we said, if you're in a new relationship, don't put so much pressure on you. If you've been together for 2+ years, I wouldn't say put pressure on yourself to make a decision anytime, but I will say be mature enough to start like you know, like come on, take responsibility, like kick your own butt and be at some point like anxiety is about kicking your own butt.
Yeah.
And doing the things and stop thinking about them. You know, it's I think I understand at first when we're anxious, we want to cater to it and we feel a little victimized and we want to process the anxiety and figure out what's going on. And I understand that there's a time for that. But at some point, that time has passed. And if you want to do something with your life, you're going to have to kick your own butt.
Yeah.
And so, and not out of pressure, not out of anxiety. We're not trying to cause any shame or any guilt or any anxiety in anyone. Because if that's what's happening when you're hearing these words, then you are moving in the wrong direction. And we do not want that. We just want you to be like strong, you know, like step into your strong side and take ownership, take responsibility for your life.
Yeah.
You know,
you're building that muscle of you can do hard things.
Yeah.
And I think that Gwen, there's somebody who that's like her like theme of like I can do hard things. And I think that's like a really like powerful, like just simple but powerful statement of you can do hard things. You can move through your anxiety. You can make a commitment. You are powerful. Like you have to start speaking that to yourself. Don't speak to your anxiety and be like, I'm an anxious person. Speak to the person who you want to be and start moving towards that direction. Like what would a powerful person do? Yeah. What would a person who's not anxious do? What would a person who wanted to make a commitment do? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's who you are. It's not an anxious person.
Yeah.
Oh, we're preaching today. Like
your anxiety,
saying a lot of things.
Your anxiety is not yours.
Yeah.
It's just the weight you picked up. Anyways, I think that's a good way to end.
Yeah, it's a good way to end.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to subscribe, like, review, comment, whatever you
All the
want to do to
things.
support us. And ask us if you have any questions.
Hmm.
Also, check out RAA.
Hmm.
And yeah,
We'll see y'all next week. Love
bye.
y'all. Bye.